Good day, everyone. So our class today is a philosophy class on the philosophy of Emmanuel Levinas. I'm giving you an introduction to his philosophy by doing some kind of a reading of my book, Freedom Unmasked. I suggest if you could get a hold of that copy, you can find this book at the Claretian bookstore, here in, I don't know where's that now, maybe in near Cruz de Ligas or Teachers Village or the Claret School. There's a Claretian bookstore there. You can find that book. If not, then you go to the Franciscan Provincial House at Frisco. There is a Franciscan development store at the Provincial House in Frisco, Quezon City. Or there's also, they're selling also a copy in Olas, Our Lady of the Angels Seminary, Bagbag, Novaliches. Okay, I will start with kind of a brief introduction on the philosophy, on the life of Emmanuel Levinas, our philosopher. Okay, I really suggest that you read. I have a kind of an introduction on the life of Emmanuel Levinas in my book, and I would proudly say that I had a good source, and I would say that I had the best, sources from French, and also from Italian, French, and English, books about his life, and I synthesized that in my book. So the beginning or second chapter of my book is about the life of Emmanuel Levinas, and I would say that I had that very good source, and you can get in a synthesis, in a few pages, you can read his life. Okay, let us now start with a brief overflow or of his life. So he was born on January 12, 1906 in Kovno, Lithuania. He was the eldest of three brothers, and the Levinas family belonged to Kovno's large and important Jewish community. So as you can see, even from his name, Levi is really a Jewish name. Levi is a priestly clan of the Jews. So after initially studying in Germany, Levinas went to the University of Strasbourg in France. There he studied philosophy, studying Bergson and Husserl. So he liked Husserl very much. In 1927, he obtained his license in philosophy and chose Husserl's theory of intuition as his dissertation topic. As you can see, that was his dissertation topic, Husserl's intuition. Then in 1928, Levinas went to Freiburg, Germany, where he had an intense reading of Heidegger's Being and Time. And in 1929, he returned to Strasbourg and completed and successfully defended his doctorate, The Theory of Intuition, in Husserl's Phenomenology. So during the time of Levinas, Husserl's philosophy, and then followed by Heidegger, was also a student of Husserl, were popular during his time. And Levinas liked their philosophy. But unfortunately, I think in 1928, he really went, according to the story, he went to Freiburg just to listen to Heidegger. They said many people would flock at his lecture, but unfortunately, that was the last time that he put his foot on the German soil. because in 1940s, during the National Socialism, the Nazi Germany, Heidegger, no, Heidegger joined the National Socialism of the Nazis. And for that, and Levinas was a Jew, and they were persecuted by the Nazis. And for that, Levinas refused to enter Germany because, and he started making all his writings, everything against Heidegger. He wanted to try to find the seed of the mistake of Heidegger. Why did he join for such a beautiful philosophy and his beautiful book of being and time? Why would this philosopher join nationalism, extreme nationalism that, that try to annihilate the other, the Jews in Germany and all over Europe during that time. So that was the reason why he, in fact, for a kind of a sarcastic way of attacking Heidegger, he wrote a book entitled Time and the Other, as against being and time. He said that the Heidegger's philosophy, being and time, is to spend only your time for being, for yourself, no? My being, the whole of being is his philosophy. Time and spent only for one's being. And Levinas simplistically say, time should be spent for others. So he had a book, Time and the Other. Time is for the other, not for ourselves. No, that's why that was the root from perhaps of the mistake of Heidegger. Because if you think only of your own being, then you become National Socialismus, the Nazi. There is no other for you. Everything has to be like you. If there is something, if there is somebody who is different, take him out, remove him. So that was his argument. In 1930, Levinas became a French citizen. In 1910, he was drafted into the French army and served as an interpreter of Russian and German. So while he was living in Lithuania, so he knew Jewish language. He knew, and during the time, Russia was also a colonial power, so they had to learn Russian, and also German was also a big country, so he has to learn German. So he went to France, Strasbourg, so he learned French. So he knows Russian, Jewish, German, and French. So he was drafted into the French army as an interpreter. In 1940, he was taken prisoner of war, unfortunately. But because he was an officer in the French army, an interpreter at that, he was sent to a military prisoners camp and did forced labor. So he was not sent into together with the other Jews, no, doon sa prison camp, doon sa where is that in Poland, no, kung saan where the Jews were persecuted. Yung gas poison, no? In 1945, Levinas returned to Paris and rejoined his family. So during the freedom time, fortunately he was still alive, and so was able to return to Paris, and he rejoined his family, whom he hid, no, with the Daughters of Charity Sisters, no, in Paris, no. Nandun sila sa ilalim ng mga kumbento ng mga madre, yung mga pamilya niya. Kaya na-save yung kanyang wife at saka yung children. Pero yung kanyang mother, father, at saka 3 brothers, they were all murdered at the concentration camp, no, in Poland. In 1947, his first book was published, Existence and Existence. No? So here, merong play of words, the essence, existence, less essence, the being, and existence. Existence is the more particular, or the other. No? Essence is more a universal word, existence. But existence, no? Ito yung individual, particular person, no? The other. So there you can see already the start of his ideas, no? After being imprisoned by the Germans. Other important works by Levinas were Time and the Other. I already mentioned about that. Totality and Infinity. This is one also famous book. And Otherwise Than Being, or Beyond Essence. Okay. In the night of December 24 to 25, 1990, Levinas died in Paris after a long struggle with illness. The funeral oration was given by Jacques Derrida, no? And the interment on December 28, 1995. So, namatay siya around 24 to 25, 1995. Okay? So, you see, Jacques Derrida, ang nagbigay ng kanyang tawag nun, sa funeral oration, no, ni Jacques Derrida. No? Okay, let us now go to our topic, or at least a rereading of this book, Freedom Unmasked, Towards a Levinasian Anthropological Disinteressement. No? So actually, in French, intéressement is selfishness, by personal interest. This is to take out my personal interest, no? So it's like from egoism, individualism. So this interosmo is individualism, egoism. Yung tingnan mo yung sa esse is being. No? So take out, no, remove, no, try to put that to the sides, no. This, no, put to the side your ego, your self-interest. No, so this means remove, without self-interest, without egoism, no, without personal interest, without esse, without being. See, that's the philosophy of Levinas. The metaphysics of freedom in Emmanuel Levinas, From Violence to Liberation. Okay, so this is Levinas. So I would like to begin some of his sayings. He said, the aim of being is being itself. So he's trying to criticize Heidegger here. So the aim is towards being itself. However, with the appearance of the human, so he's now presenting here a new kind of humanism, not an egoistic humanism, but the human, the appearance of the human and the face. And this is my entire philosophy, he said. There is something more important than my life. And that is the life of the other. So if you would like to understand the philosophy of Levinas, where he goes round and round, even he has many writings, but I think that is the entire philosophy of Levinas, no? A critique against being, because being is for itself. And he said, no, our goal to be a good philosopher is, to look that there is something more important than my being, than my life, and that is the life of the other. The provocation of Levinas is a collection of his articles of Levinas, PL, Provocation, Levinas number 172. Okay, so it is a book in English with all the contents. Okay, if you want to see more of the books of English books, all I think, almost all of the books of Levinas and articles of Levinas, you can find that at Ola's library. I have all those books there, deposited everything there, and primary and secondary sources on Emmanuel Levinas, there's plenty at Ola's, because all of my books are there. In fact, I have the French original of Levinas. I don't know where I put it now. I cannot remember. I don't know if I also surrendered that to Ola's library, but I don't think so, because nobody will read French in Ola's. But anyway, the English primary and secondary sources, you can find a lot in Ola's. Another, which I tried to paraphrase Levinas under this image of Levinas, is that for Levinas, the truly philosophical aspect of any philosophy is measured in its relevance. The greatest gift a philosophy can give is its associations with the preoccupations of today, the very preoccupations of many in our country today. Okay, so if you're a true philosopher, and the philosophical aspect, the truly philosophical aspect, is measured in its relevance. If you are irrelevant, then don't take that kind of philosophy. A philosophy that is relevant, that is the truly philosophical aspect of it. The greatest gift a philosopher can give, who Levinas said, is its associations with the preoccupations of today. So like, today, these times, we have all this pandemic, and we have all this typhoon, one after another. You see, a truly philosopher will feel, will suffer, will always have the other as more important than his life. Okay, so that is the challenge of Levinas for us. If for us, is philosophy is just to read and write and forget about our concerns for the other, then that is not real or truly a philosophy for Levinas. And the introduction to this book is this, no? This philosophy of being and identity renders all experience intelligible. So Levinas is trying to present, a kind of a general critique on philosophy, And he said, from Plato, or for the Greek philosopher, up to his philosophy that he is studying, he said, oh, this is a philosophy of being and identity. And the task of that philosophy is only to render everything and all experience intelligible. And I think that is really the philosophy, We try to make everything understandable. We try to make everything comprehensible. We try to make everything intelligible. That is also good, okay? But unfortunately, that can also be very violent, because the negative effect of that is if those who are not comprehensible, those who are not intelligible, take them out, remove them, annihilate them. And I think that is the place now where Levinas would enter the word other. Okay, so this philosophy universalizes. He said the Western philosophy from Plato to Heidegger universalizes, synthesizes, reduces everything to a neuter term such as being, spirit, reason, or history. Sometimes, in fact, it is true. Sometimes history, encapsulates the past. This is history, period, no more. So it tries to somehow make history intelligible, in as much as any story outside the story, or the main story, or the postmodern language, the meta narrative outside that is nothing, doesn't exist, or is only a false idea. I think here Levinas tries to say that there's something wrong with this. Not everything should be universalized. Not everything should be reduced. Not everything should be put encapsulated in history. There are maybe the silent, or the stories of the poor, the stories of the indigenous, of the little voices out there, that are not capsulized. So Levinas, in his first book, major work, Totalité et Infinie, or Totality and Infinity, TI, 1961, calls this philosophy as a totalizing philosophy. So from Plato to Heidegger, this kind of universalizing philosophy is a totalizing philosophy. So that's why it's totality. If you read that book, Totality, he refers to the philosophy that universalizes and the philosophy that totalizes, a philosophy that tries to comprehend and make everything intelligible. And then he said, and, or et, infini, or and infinity. So he said, philosophy is not only totality, so it's not really versus, He uses the word et. In Latin is et, and. So totalizing philosophy, which is also in one way or another necessary to synthesize, to make things comprehensible and intelligible, but he did not say versus infinity. Infinity is his philosophy. He's trying to say that there are other things, that escapes totality. So he said, et infinity. So the philosophy of totality and his philosophy of the infinity, he's trying to add something on this. Okay, please do not say that all of philosophy is totality. There is supposed to be a place for infinity. Okay, that is totalite, which refers to totalizing being. There is no possibility for the beyond, for transcendence. Levinas instead insisted a space for infinity transcendence, the other. Yan na yung infinity niya. So, infinity, transcendence, something that you cannot grasp, There's a totally other, the other, so that you cannot reduce, escapes any way of reductionism or synthesis. Okay, that philosophy of totality reduced the other into the same. I think that is the tendency of, I feel like, if you look at the other, sometimes even in our relationship, we try to look at the other, with our own selves, and then we define the other. Oh, he is not as kind as me. He's not as friendly as me. So he's friendly. He's friendly like I am friendly. So when we do that kind of thing, we are putting the other into the same. We should leave the other, as he is. The total otherness of the other. Do not reduce the other to the same. In French, le même. Okay. In his second major book, Autrement, Quiet, Au-delà de l'essence, 1974, AEAE. That is how we abbreviate that book. Otherwise than being or beyond essence. That's why he could not. Levinas was having difficulty, to how to describe this one. So he said, if it's not being, so it has to be an otherwise than being. So he autrement qui est, au-delà de l'essence, otherwise than being. So it has to be otherwise than being. So that was in that book, there was the direction pointing out to beyond, going beyond being. Okay? The philosophy that forgets the other cannot be a prima philosophia. If ontology focalizes on one's thinking and one's being and existence of it and existence, it cannot be a noble kind of philosophy. It is an egotism. Okay, that is Levinas' way of trying to describe the philosophy of the Western philosophy. And he said it cannot be a prima philosophia if it is if that philosophy is only about existence, about being, and not existence, not the other. Okay, so because that kind of philosophy, as in egotism. So Levinas asked, is it righteous to be? The aim of being is being itself. However, the appearance of the human, and this is my entire philosophy, I'm repeating the quote I made in the beginning of this lecture, there is something more important in my life, my thinking, my being, my existence, and that is the life of the other. Okay, so for Levinas, to look into our being is a little bit too much. So you have to go beyond our being. For Levinas, freedom was heavily based on the philosophy of being and identity. Okay, so if you look, that's why, in fact, even today, in Europe and also in the US, I don't know, here in the Philippines, during the time of COVID, people say, why are you telling me to wear mask? Why are you telling me to put on a face shield? Can I be free? I am free. I want to be free. So there are groups in Europe and in the US, they call the negationists. They deny this COVID thing, at the understanding and knowledge of many infected already, thousands, millions infected, and also thousands have died already. They still negate. I am free. I don't want to wear mask. I don't believe COVID. No, see, freedom. This freedom is for him heavily based on the philosophy of being and identity. That's why there is a caution against liberalism. Too much freedom without responsibility, without thinking for the other, is not freedom at all. Its essence is self-interestedness and self-sufficiency. So maraming mga rights dyan, may freedom, may crime. The essence of all these kind of freedom is self-interest, my sufficiency. Okay? One who struggles for one's being, one's existence, one's place in the sun becomes a usurper and a murderer. You see, the language of Levinas is trying to attack, in fact, maybe he's imagining here Heidegger and all the Nazi during his time, those who believe, or the being, my being, one who struggles for my being, my nation, my freedom, my place in the sun. You are a usurper and a murderer. Yeah, you see the language, murderer. Okay, every time we say, this is my land, actually, well, we have lands, but you know, that's why when we have lands, we have properties, we say, this is my place. We have actually, I know, somehow we have become a usurper and a murderer because we have, you know, okay, this is not your place, go out. This is my place. So I think this is a very, very beautiful way of looking at our own properties. I am free to own it. But now, sometimes, if you have too much of your property, it's like many rich people say, I am free to buy. I have the money. I can buy this land. I can make use of this land. I can exploit this land. No, you see, you are a usurper and a murderer. No? Maybe that's why we need only enough of what we have, or make use of what we have. No, you are a usurper and a murderer. It's freedom and otherwise than being. Is there a place of the good beyond being? To agathon in Plato's philosophy. Levinas wants to liberate freedom from this struggle to be, which for him is violent in itself. Hence, the subtitle From Violence to Liberation. So that's why I said freedom and marriage, because I want to not to replace freedom. Yeah, but I want to make use of the noble freedom. That's why I say unmasking freedom from its connection with being. No? Because if it is so intertwined with being, that freedom can be violent, that freedom is selfish, and for Levinas, murderer. No? So we will say, from a violent conception of freedom to real liberation, to free freedom from the clutches of egoism. How can that be? So Levinas was convinced that war and violence is rooted in a totalizing philosophy that values an autonomous and free subject. So that's why, in fact, all of those times, during the time of Levinas, Levinas experienced that war, violence, you know, the Second World War, and he also must have experienced the First World War, then the Second World War, rooted in a philosophy that values an autonomous and free subject. It's all about my freedom, my nation against the other. So unmasking freedom, or we say deontologizing freedom. In order to leave from this tradition of reduction of the other, Levinas says that the ethical revelation is a kind of separation. So he said, let us separate from that ontology. So deontologize freedom. Separation here does not only mean physical distance, but it denotes difference. No? The other is absolutely different from me because there is no general concept or category that unites us. So he tries to say, okay, the other being is, and there is another, an otherwise than being that is absolutely different from me, because there is no general concept or category that unites. The other is indefinable. The other escapes any ontological category. There is in the other that I cannot grasp, that is beyond my comprehension. This is what Levinas calls as the alterity, although even the word alterity, put it in quotation mark because it is alterity. When you put I-T-Y-T, it is the being the other, or the other being. So maybe there is still being. So, but say, but something that is beyond my grasp. something that beyond our comprehension, is the other. The other is the exterior being. No? The other is not only an alter ego. The other is what I myself am not. This exterior being is named face by Levinas. No? Yung mukha. No? Yung mukha ko ngayon ay maraming allergy. No? Kaya yan, makikita niyo yung aking allergy. The face is the other that is beyond comprehension. There is more to being than being itself. Okay. Levinas showed that subjectivity recognizes the excesses of le visage and the loot that shatters the totalizing system. You know, Levinas places, you know, in the face of the other. If you look at the face of the other, there's something that escapes. You cannot define it really. The visage. Yeah, I mean, you can draw it, but you know, there's something beyond it. And then if you look into the eyes of the other, sometimes it escapes. It escapes, no? That's why yung eye-to-eye contact, sometimes, you know, the eye escapes. Or even we try to escape, no? Because there's something in the eye or something in the face that, you know, there's the excesses of le visage, the face of the other. The subject's confrontation with a human person, the other shatters the arrogance of the disinterested ego. So I think Levinas would try to draw our attention. No? You look at those faces of the Jews who were persecuted during his time. Now, even we don't have to go back to those times. No? And there are photos today about, you know, kids, ano, under the mud, no? Itong sa typhoon, recent typhoon. You know, there's something, that image actually shatters us, no? Disturbs us. So you don't have, you know, so it's not actually, when you look at that photo, that's the other. It commands you. No? It commands you. So you are shattered. It commands you to look and think, and, you know, you start criticizing government, getting people. You start, you know, because you are shattered, you are disturbed, you know, by that image. Okay, that's what Levinas is saying. No, that other becomes more than you. You know, it looks down on you. It looks poor there. You know, a boy, or a child, no, na puno ng ano, putik dahil sa bagyo na lupay-pay yung mukha, puno ng putik dyan, no? I saw that on the photo on the newspaper, no? Yeah. But that image is already another, different. No? It's in fact above me. Levinas showed that the face cannot be thematized. It overflows all ontological categories. The metaphysics of the other in the epiphany of the corporeal, vulnerable, but enigmatic face reveals the pre-philosophical height of the other that challenges the complacency of the autonomous and free subject. So you can see that, you know, this is what I'm saying. Philosophical height of the other that challenges the complacency of the autonomous and free subject. The vulnerable but enigmatic face. Now, tingnan mo yung, the only thing that cannot be covered really is the face. Yung ating katawan, po natin lagyan ng ano, ng damit. Although ngayon ay, tingnan mo, kahit tatakpan natin yung mukha natin, hindi pwede. Face shield lang. Face shield. Nakikita yung mukha. Why? No, because the face is vulnerable. The most vulnerable part of the human person is the face. Kahit yung mga Muslim, hindi nila pwedeng totally takpan yung mukha nila. Yung mga babae, lalabas pa rin yung mata. It's still part of the face. No? Kaya yung ating face mask, hindi walang face mask na takpan yung lahat. Face mask hanggang dito lang. Yung face shield tayo. So, the face is vulnerable, exposed. And that vulnerability is actually the vulnerable image of the face, no? That we see anywhere. People are vulnerable, and especially those who are little ones, the poor, and so on and so forth. They are poor, they are little, but they are a philosophical height. No? Mahirap sila, mababa kasi mahirap, pero pag nakita mo sila para kang, aray ko, nasasaktan ako, para akong na-touch ako, na-konsyensya ako. No? Diba? Yan ang face. Lalo na yung mga face ng mga lumuluha, no? Face ng mga mahirap, no? Yan. Such subjects is the science of its imperialism and egotism. So ngayon, the face incised our imperialism and egotism. But the freedom that can be ashamed of itself found truth. Okay, so now your freedom, if you are ashamed now, if you are already embarrassed by the other, then you've found the truth. Okay, because you are going to depose your own personal self-interest in recognizing the other. Disinterestism of freedom without being. So this is now the goal of Levinas, or well, in my thesis also I was trying to look into this. No? The strangeness of the other, or its irreducibility to the I, to my thoughts, and to my possession, is precisely calling into question of my autonomy, my arrogance, my freedom. So, okay, now the vulnerable face, the strangeness of that face of the other, its irreducibility to the I, to my thoughts, and to my property, to my possession, is precisely a calling into question of my autonomy, my place in the sun, my property, no? I'm being shattered. No? My arrogance, my freedom. Okay? Parang si Wawawi, you know? Parang sabi niya, what's the use of if I have a lot of cars? No ba? Nabasa ko lang to kanina, kahapon ba yun? If I have a lot of cars, but and many people are suffering and hungry. And he said, maybe this is now the time. Sometimes really money can tempt us. No? My life, my possession, my. Now, the other puts his autonomy, his freedom to be rich and to have all properties that he wants into question. He said, now it's about time. I don't know what he's going to do. He may sell all those cars and give it to the poor, or go to the poor himself. Okay? Freedom being put into question is therefore a freedom being preceded. Now your freedom, now like, see, Wawawi, being preceded. Yung freedom mo, no? My right, no? Now, there's something that precedes me now. This is more powerful than my ego, my totalizing philosophy. Wala na. There's something other that precedes me. The encounter with the other does not contradict the freedom of the self. So it is not a contradiction. The other endows the self with a responsible freedom. Now, okay, this is now the new way of looking at freedom. Now, so I'm trying to get an example now. See, we maybe not so good example, but you know, at least ngayon sinabi niya yun, at least we take his word for that, no? Parang, you see, he encountered the face and the images of the suffering people, no, due to this typhoon. And it contradicts the freedom of his self, of you know, amassing more properties, more luxurious cars worth millions. No? And then, no, it is not that contradicts the freedom of the self. In fact, it endows, it invests, it gives the self with a responsible freedom. Now, you are going to use your freedom responsibly. I am elected to be responsible. Répondons de tout et de tous. No one can take place or substitute a subject's responsibility to the other. So, Levinas used the word election. First, we are not really free at all, first of all. We are elected first to be responsible. Because freedom, you know, when, sino bang nauna? Yung pagkatao ko, yung pagpanganak ko, may freedom na ba ako? Wala pa. Bago ko pinanganak, wala pa. Ipinanganak ka muna. Nung ipinanganak ka na, doon mo pa natanton may freedom ka. Kung hindi ka ipinanganak, no, kung hindi ka inelect ng creator or whatever, no, if you don't believe in God, no, if you were not born or somebody make you born, no, into this world, then you will not have freedom. So freedom is preceded always by the other. You see, you are elected now to be free. Why? Because una, pinili ka na maipanganak sa dami mga sperms, no, doon sa ano, naghahanap, ikaw ang napili. O yun, napili ka, ikaw lang. Ikaw muna ang pinili, ikaw muna ang na-elect. Before you were born, you were chosen by the other. And then, there, your freedom comes. So, hindi talaga nauna ang freedom. So, we have to go back to that. Investment and election comes before being. You are invested with life. You are elected to be born before your being. Okay? That is the philosophy of living. Freedom is really free when the subject is responsible for the freedom of others. The supreme work of freedom consists in guaranteeing freedom. The awakening of freedom consists not in justifying itself, but in a radical non-indulgence in one's freedom. Okay, so yan. So non-indulgence in one's freedom. So this is now a real freedom, responsible for the others. The supreme work of freedom consists in guaranteeing freedom. Okay? Levination freedom moves from a violent one to genuine liberation. The subject here is immediately a here I am, in the accusative case of an asymmetrical intersubjectivity, and not in a nominative I of the mutual and asymmetric intersubjective relation. So now it is no longer a violent freedom. The subject, the I, for Levinas, is a here I am. It's always, when you say I, it is always for Levinas a responsible subject. Me voici. Narito po ako. No? Yan ang subject ni Levinas. Hindi, ako ito. No? Pag narito po ako. Ang Tagalog medyo mas malapit doon sa responsible. Narito ako. No? Or kasi ako po ito. Pero narito ako. No? Pag tinatawag, narito po, ako po ito. No? Narito po ako. So parang you come to serve, to be responsible. No? Not the nominative I, but of the mutual and symmetric interrelation. The abstract laws of the state cannot see persons and can be violent. But through Levinas' ethics of the face, politics is invited to see also more seriously the silent tears of the other. No? So this is now something very good for us, so for those who are working in politics. Sometimes politics and laws and legalism can blind us from seeing the tears of the other. See? Maraming itong sa panahon ng pandemya, dahil sa batas, parang nabubulag din tayo sa mga maliliit, sa mga luha, sa mga gutom ng tao. No? Just apply the batas without realizing that, these are persons who can be hungry. Why are they going out? No? Wala silang makakain, wala sarap. Paano sila quarantine, mag-lockdown o mamamatay sila? Hindi niyo inisip muna na ayan. No? So you have to, you try to, beyond politics, see the face. No? See the face. This is what Levinas is trying to play. No? Politics can be violent. Politics is invited to see also more seriously the silent tears of the other. The presence of the other, the stranger of the other, is introduced due to the I, to my thoughts, and to my possessions. It's precisely a calling into question of my autonomy and my arrogance, my freedom. Freedom being put into question is therefore a freedom being preceded. I think that was repeated already. Okay, we are brought forth into a family, an extended family with all the relatives, neighbors, and friends. Such precedence of the other, Levinas also associates with the term creature. No? So, totoo naman, no? Ikaw sa totoo lang, we are born into a family. No? So, what happens? You are not the first. There are others before you. So, huwag kang mayabang. Kasi hindi ka naman nauna. Always may nauna sa'yo. So pagkapagitip, when you are born, there are already relatives, neighbors, and friends. We are preceded by the other. Preceded by the other. But the fact is, I am created in the same way my freedom is invested. But the fact that we are created, we are chosen, we are elected, we are invested, my freedom is invested. I am elected to be responsible, responsible to all, the tu et de tous. No one can take a place or subject to the subject's responsibility to the other. Maganda itong pag-isipan, maganda itong phrase ito. No one can take place or substitute my responsibility to the other. Example, ngayon, may nagugutom doon sa may nalulunod doon sa Tugigaraw, no? Kung nakonsensya ka, o di ikaw ang pupunta. Totoo lang, ha? Languin mo, kung kaya mo, iligtas mo yon. Pag ibang nagligtas, hindi na ikaw yon, syempre, di ba? So, hindi mo talaga masasubstitute. No? Hindi mo, yung responsibilidad mo, pag iba ang gumagawa, hindi na ikaw yon. Di ba? Kahit pang yung tinatawag ng delegation natin sa pagtulong sa iba, o sige, pera lang, ito pera ko, pakitulong na lang doon. Nakatulong ka nga. Pero yung, in a sense, what I'm saying is that, you cannot replace or substitute your own responsibility. That's why, kaya tayo, sabi nga ni Levinas, we're always late in our responsibility. Itong ating pagkaklase ngayon, marami nang nalulunod, marami nang nagugutom, no? Isang oras tayo nagklase, dapat 45 minutes, lumalampas na pala ako ng isang oras. Ayun ako, yan. Marami nang, late ka na sa iyong responsibility. Kung may tumulong doon, hindi ikaw yon. Yung substitute ay substitute. ang pumalit ay hindi ikaw. Freedom is only free when the subject is responsible for the freedom of others. No? Yan ang gusto nila. The supreme work of freedom consists in guaranteeing freedom. Just to summarize, the awakening of freedom consists not in justifying itself, but in radical non-indulgence in one's freedom. So non-indulgence with one's freedom. So I'm this is partly part of my own thesis, no? And I was trying to recall my experience with the demolition ng mga slum dwellers. No? Of course, nasabi natin mga squatter sila masasamang tao sila ng lupa. Pero look, if you just look to those faces, no? I lived with people like that in my formation years, no? I remember the pleading faces of many slum area dwellers during times of demolitions. One face joined with the other faces, shatter freedom's arrogance, and bring freedom back to its humble origins. No, before parang ganun ako magtingin, kayo, mga magnanakaw, mga slum dwellers, mga squatter kayo. Pero when I lived with them, then I realized that, they're just trying to survive. Yeah, meron mga sindikato, blah, 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 pero napakaliit lang yun. But most of these people are trying to survive. No? Look at their faces. Then you will understand more. It will shatter your arrogance, your freedom to its humble origins. The anguish, the cry, the vulnerability of these faces invoke the original goodness in which freedom is embedded. No? In order for justice not to be circumvented into a tolerable politics, it requires a different authority other than that of the harmonious relations established between wills, but based on a vocation outside the state to an original sociality goodness. So parang the challenge of Levinas is to go back into that original sociality goodness of the human. We are human persons. We are not wolves, against each other. And that is what is happening today. We have become non-humans. We have become wolves, and worse than wolves, we destroy each other. Politics left to itself by necessity totalizes the other and is a tyranny. No? Kaya pag politics left to itself, maganda talang ang politics makinig. Kapag hindi ito nakikinig, it becomes tyranny. The abstract laws of the state cannot see persons and can be violent, but through Levinas' ethics of the face, politics is invited to see also more seriously the silent tears of the other. Do not run simply by laws. Laws are made for persons. And if it destroys persons, then there's a wrong implementation of rules and laws. Try to see not the universalized persons, but the particular person. That person, where tears flowing from his eyes. I think okay, so these are one of the faces of a demolition in Manila a long time ago. Look at that face. Very vulnerable. Hindi sa kanya yung lupa. I know, we know. But, that's the effect of also some kind of greediness. I want that place, go away. And that person already have millions of acres of lands and properties. See? Levinas desired us to look at the face of the widow and the orphan and the stranger. Concretely for him, that face was the fate of the million Jews, including his parents and brothers, who became faces in the name of National Socialism. So yan ang experience ni Levinas. During the time, it was illegal, so all right for the Germans to kill and annihilate Jews, including his parents, brothers. They became faceless in the name of National Socialism. For me, his invitation is to look constantly at the face and the haunting cry of a poor mother with her child beaten while defending her makeshift home, to see the face of the Filipino migrant and all migrants forced to leave their country and loved ones because of poverty and lack of opportunities. I would like to end my talk here. There are still more, I think, on the slides, but it is just like a summary. But I think it's more than 1 hour already. So I just thank you. You can all just send your questions, later on, and as I suggest, as a kind of a requirement, you look for my book, and you can get everything there at Clarician's bookstore, and or at Olas, or at at Frisco, San Pedro Bautista Convent. There is a store there where you can find my book. So thank you very much for listening. Take care. God bless.